The worst thing about TERFs, aka Feminism Incorporated's budget cuts. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and did you know that every time feminists have told you that feminism is not an organization, after you hadn't actually asked anyway, they were totally lying? Yeah, you can search for yourself for all of the countless individual officially documented feminist organizations, or I suggest that you listen to the interview Sargon of Akkad had with Erin Pizzi, founder of the world's first domestic violence shelter, that I will link in the description at the bottom of this video, where she explains how radical feminists have built a fraudulent, taxpayer-funded, multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry ever since the second wave of feminism. It's fairly obvious to anybody who really bothers to document receipts that feminism is extremely organized on basically every level, from corrupt politicians clearly funneling money into blogs like Everyday Feminism that end up begging for donations from their fans after their presidential candidate lost, all the way down to other happenings like Gamergate and the collusion of feminists in the Crash Override network, which is basically an organized bullying network of its own, posing as a way to fight against bullying. Fascinating. Finally, it's fairly obvious that the TERFs are incredibly organized, and they probably have some secret meeting places of their own on the internet where they corroborate their stories together and decide which transgender figures and sympathizers to target for online smear campaigns. TERFs tend to swarm around individuals they hate with their massive quantities of sock puppet accounts, which have had their IP addresses traced and mostly come from a very small amount of users. It's probably really less than 10 radical feminists who are responsible for most of these accounts that you'll find on Twitter and in YouTube comment sections. They have no problem hounding a trans woman for months on end, telling her that she's a man and that she looks like a man, pointing out her masculine features, and telling her that she is a rapist because she's a man, and all men are rapists. And when the trans woman gets mad, the TERFs will screen capture her angry comments to warn of transgender aggression. Do you think that I'm exaggerating? I think that you should find some TERFs online and observe their behavior. They are a lot worse than the acronym Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist sounds. Magdalene BERNS is the TERF queen on YouTube, or as they slyly call themselves, gender critical feminists. And she's the one that you might have noticed on Twitter because although TERFs are a rightfully rather hated population due to their relentless vicious attacks and endless dishonesty, BERNS is actually willing to show her face for some reason, unlike well over 90% of TERF accounts on the internet who are anonymous. The sock puppet accounts flock to Magdalene BERNS like she is their warlord, because she's played a somewhat clever game of carefully and deliberately misrepresenting YouTubers in her video responses in a way that the current YouTube market finds entertaining, and then baiting people she disagrees with into social media interactions by pretending to be open to doing a live stream with them. And then she lies through her teeth about them when they inevitably get mad at her. Megs actually had me going when I first decided to try to engage with her on YouTube, and she's even tricked my friend Sinatra Says, and also even Bearing, into thinking that she's reasonable and not a serial liar in the same league as Anita Sarkeesian. I thought that conversing with her on YouTube could possibly be worthwhile until I made a video about TERFs, and she deliberately misrepresented it with selective editing. And when I objected, she just began flat out lying about what the conflict was actually about ever since. and I uploaded that video on the 2nd of April. Yep, somehow I still get roped into being some sort of anti-TERF spokesperson on Twitter, and it really has almost nothing to do with the actual arguments. I'm just annoyed that they can't stop fucking lying about me. You can find Magdalene BERNS lying about me on Twitter even still if you want to go check, saying that I went crying to my mother because I was beaten in an argument, in so many words, over and over and over, like in this tweet, when the real story is that I asked my mother for advice in regards to how to deal with a person who recklessly lies relentlessly and publicly, getting caught over and over, but happens to have a brain tumor which might be impairing her judgment. BERNS does have a brain tumor. Because I asked my mother this because for a while I felt like I should have legitimate sympathy for Magdalene BERNS' health. Sympathy which she has done everything she can to exhaust. Eventually, it became apparent that Megs is only interested in one thing, preserving her own narrative. And her narrative is that trans women are men, feminism is for women, anybody who disagrees is homophobic and misogynist, or maybe an SJW, depending upon her mood. And anybody I make a video about that gets mad at me for misrepresenting them is really only mad because they couldn't handle my logical arguments. That's all she'll ever say. That's all that the countless sock puppet accounts that surround her will ever say. And of course, though she's claimed to numerous people to be open to doing live streams, she's literally never done a single live stream with anybody with opposing viewpoints like she says that she's going to do. But are we surprised? If you're a serial liar and you get to the point where you've repeatedly and knowingly misrepresented people, there's no way that you can ever actually face that person for an open dialogue, because you'd be confronted directly with those lies by the person you've been lying about. And so, like Anita Sarkeesian before her, Megs has to keep lying. Like in this tweet. You've made several videos begging me to quit because you are threatened about losing your echo chamber. Run back to your safe space. I have? I've made several videos begging you to quit. I'm fairly certain I only made one where I even suggested that she might want to stop with the endless internet drama because she has a brain tumor and it can't be good for her health. But this next one is my favorite. You are an SJW. Yeah, I bet that fooled lots of people, Megs. Surely nobody can take a look at my channel and see for themselves that I have literally dozens and dozens of videos with SJW in the damned title where I am talking shit about SJWs. No, nobody can tell that you're lying. Okay, but ultimately, I can finish up about BERNS for a few reasons, though she'll obviously never be done talking about me, and we can assume that she'll be making a response video to this where she'll blatantly be misrepresenting the contents of this video like she always does. Mark my words. BERNS, we all know selective editing is all you got. Still, she really does have a brain tumor, which from afar legitimately seems to be clouding her judgment. I mean, we can assume that the relentless lying is just habitual at this point, because, well, she's a feminist. But really, I think that she's just unaware how blatantly obvious it really is to anybody observing that she's constantly lying. Likely because she's not all there in the head. And it's in very poor taste that the swarms of sock puppet accounts and radical feminists who follow her feed into the delusions of an unhealthy woman and encourage her to stay engaged in this endless drama, while her reputation is ruined publicly when she keeps getting caught lying. But more so, the real reason that I want to change the subject away from BERNS is that she isn't even the worst of them. No, they create entire imitation Twitter accounts to dox and intimidate some of your favorite YouTube personalities, and they really do pay 4chan newbies to harass and dox people online. Seriously, soon after this comment calling for my dox was posted, I had some idiot fucking with me and trying to dox me, and he had told me clearly at some point that Magdalene BERNS sent him, though I don't know for 100% certain that she called for it herself. She claims in the text below one of her main smear videos of me that she doesn't want people to dox me, but it doesn't mean that she didn't ask for it. Regardless, I even ended up getting bullshit from a Twitter account named Jean Hatchet, who is world famous at this point for her relentless Twitter trash talking. She's kind of hilarious, really. The first thing she did was seemingly use a sock puppet account to post by the name of some guy who is a convicted rapist and stalker. She used a sock puppet by his name in my comments, and then she started tweeting at me that I was supposedly hosting a rapist in my comments, demanding that I delete the comments from the sock puppet account, which we can assume was hers anyway. When I refused to cater to her wishes, and told her that it's not my obligation to control my comment section and that it would be a bad precedent to take requests for comment deletion. And then I also refused to stop exposing Magdalene BERNS as a liar. Jean Hatchet ended up leaving me this comment, which is truthfully one of the most beautiful things that has ever happened to me in all of social media history. You have become more worrying as this debate has progressed. Initially, I thought you were just an arrogant fool who was trying to create a drama around yourself for increased views. There seemed little other reason to attack an ill woman. However, looking at the language you have used on Twitter, your misogyny is rife. You don't just hate Magdalene, you hate women. You are hosting a stalker and a harasser of women, and when challenged about this, you tell women, deal with your own problems. Your language in many tweets is quite obviously combative. It uses aggression as a semantic field, and this worries me. Your temper is short. I fear for the women in your life. I really do. A man like you, with a grudge like this, is a very dangerous man. Other men should be standing aside from your horrific behavior over the past few days. Men who stand with you are colluding with abuse and harassment. And I'm like, that was epic. You deserve an Oscar. So I think I should be really honest about what I suspect is going on here, because I can't say it in any other way. These TERFs are professionals. Radical feminist professionals like Erin Pizzey speaks of in the interview that I really want you to listen to. Their level of commitment to constantly tweeting and posting comments under videos, and their dedication to propagating the most obvious lies can only come from people who are being paid to do this. And like I said, if you can't take my word for it, take it from the woman who started the first domestic violence shelter in the world. Feminism really is a gigantic organization that is a multi-billion-dollar-a-year business funded by taxpayer money. So with that in mind, you have to remember that there are countless people who get paid to do this, and their primary goal is to procure as much money and influence for the greater organization or sisterhood as they possibly can. That all said, the current year is 2017, and in the UK, feminism has been under threat of having their corruption exposed quite openly very much in recent years, due to people like Sargon of Akkad, Milo Yiannopoulos, Paul Joseph Watson, and, most potently, Philip Davies, who is a men's rights advocate who got elected to the Women and Equalities Commission in Parliament. And if you take a gander on Twitter at Magdalene BERNS followers, they are largely, if not mostly, radical feminists in the UK, like she is. But even more than that, if you've noticed that the amount of TERF activity on the internet has doubled or tripled since after Trump won the election, I don't think that that could possibly be a coincidence. Here's the thing. Up until early 2016, feminism was rapidly expanding into everywhere it possibly could until it finally met its match against the skeptic sphere on YouTube. However, the feminists were quite literally attempting to take over the entire Western world by doing everything they could collectively to put Hillary Clinton into office. I have long speculated that certainly at least the bulk of fourth wave feminist internet propaganda was what happened when the Democratic Party in the United States began funneling money into the already established feminist organizations and individual citizen propagandists, with the final goal being to hopefully get Hillary Clinton into office, because the only reason to vote for that wretched woman was vagina. That said, they failed. And oh boy, did they ever fail. They lost the election tragically and with all of the media on their side, to the price of $1.3 billion that we know was spent for certain. And who does that look bad on? Well, the Democratic Party obviously looks the worst, but a very close second would be the entire expanses of Western feminism. And no, this is not at all confined just to the United States. The Guardian, which is a UK blog, is one of the most vile feminist rags on the planet and was one of the biggest outlets gunning for Clinton. Everything associated with mainstream feminism works together, which is why you get such ideological purity standards, as was evident in their rejection of Lacey Green. And so, when you look at the TERFs, what is their role in all of this? I think it's fairly simple. Due to feminism's spectacular collective failures in recent years, especially losing all of their bets trying to get Queen Hillary into office, Feminism Incorporated is going to face massive budget cuts like they've never seen before. And what does one do if you're a professional feminist that wants to remain individually secure on the gravy train? Damage control, and cutting losses from the least necessary portions of the feminist budget. And what are the least necessary facets of the feminist budget? Well, clearly, obviously, a lot of them think that it's transgender activism that has to go. Transgender activism has obviously been a big topic of feminist conversation in recent years, but some feminists say no more. They can't afford it. Do these women hate trans people legitimately? I'm sure that there's a number of them who sincerely do, but I ultimately don't think that that is the primary motivation that has inspired countless around-the-clock, sock puppet, serial lying Twitter and YouTube accounts. I think, honestly, they are just in self-preservation mode. Some high-ranking executive at some feminist organization's office probably realized that if they can convince as many transgender people as possible that feminism fucking hates them, then cisgender feminists can go back to quietly taking taxpayer money for themselves and continue to live off of it, even when the money stops flowing so generously. The vast majority of TERFs don't show their faces, of course, besides Magdalene BERNS, who probably just isn't thinking clearly enough to make good decisions. And in 20 years, if feminists think that maybe they can take over the world again, they'll just play the nice, innocent, "we want equality" routine like they always do. But for now, damage control is their top priority, and so the TERFs will be plentiful and aggressive. So if any transgender person still hasn't figured out that feminism doesn't really want to help you, but only wants to use you as a prop when they want to on occasion, like they've done countless times over the years when they've pretended to like gay men, well, I hope that you don't fall under illusions for much longer. Drop me a comment, be like these people so I can buy a new computer, or hit me up on Twitter so that I can give you my PayPal for a direct donation, and stay tuned.